Looks like we've stabilized a little bit, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Michael Henrich. It is such a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I work for Arch Street Communications. I'm here on behalf of the AECOM team, working on public engagement as part of this effort to really collaborate with you and find opportunities that the end result will be exactly what the community is looking for. And so we wanted to take this time over the next 45 minutes and break it up in the following way. For the next 5 minutes or so, I think it's always good to have a little bit of an agenda and know what's coming. So for the next 4 or 5 minutes, we'll explain the type of activities and introduce ourselves. Then we'll have 12 minutes for each of the 3 focus areas that Nora described. And then we'll take another 5 minutes at the end and prepare what we're going to share with the group, because each group is doing the same activity. And it'll be nice to have a moment where all of that, all of the highlights, if you will, the key points that each group agrees on can be shared with one another. So before we go any further, I do want to mention that we are recording this just like the main meeting. And so that is an important disclaimer. And as we speak, after we do the introductions, we'd love to use that raise hand feature under the reactions. That way everybody gets a chance to share and voice their opinion. Let's do some introductions, and then I'll go back to the visuals that we're seeing here and walk us through that. So Garrett, would you, I know you've already spoken, but if you want to say hi as well in here, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining room 2. Couple specific hellos. Hi to Alice and hi to Doug. Nice to virtually see you both.
Hi.
And if everyone could, we'll go in alphabetical, we'll go down the list here of participants. If you could say your name, if you're representing an organization or if you're a resident, just share that and share why you're here. I guess if we'll go down the list here, we'll start with Brian. If you'd be so kind.
Hi, my name is Brian Cushman. I live in the River House. I'm an owner here, and I've been in the area since 2012. I'm also a very, very active real estate broker in the area. So I know myself and many of my customers care what's going to go on in our beautiful community.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Alice, I think you're next on the list here.
Hi, thanks very much. My name is Alice Blank. I'm Vice Chair of Community Board 1, and I'm Chair of the Community's Environmental Protection Committee. So I've been following these projects for a long time, and I hope I can be helpful in whatever way possible and to certainly interface with the community. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Deborah.
Hi. I'm Deborah Howes. I work for AECOM. I'm the Director of Community Planning at AECOM, and I'm working with Arch Street. I'm going to be filling one of Heather's shoes. I've known Heather for a long time. I'm very familiar with Battery Park City. I worked for Rock Rose as a real estate agent back in the 80s when they had a couple of rental properties down there. I'm a born New Yorker, born on 3rd Avenue, but I'm very familiar with Lower Manhattan. I worked at 125 Broad for many years as well, and I'm getting acclimated to the project. So very, very pleased to meet all of you, and mostly here tonight to listen.
Thank you so much. Douglas, if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yes. Hi. Thanks, Michael. Garrett, good evening. Nice to see you as well. My name is Doug Israel. I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, right across the street from Battery Park City.
Wonderful. Welcome tonight.
Thank you.
Farah, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Farah Arabe. I am a resident of Battery Park City. I've been a resident for about 10 years, but for about 17 years in Lower Manhattan. I am a mother of 2 children, and just as a neighbor and resident with a family in the area who also owns the apartment, I am deeply curious to learn more about the future of our beautiful neighborhood and as well to share any thoughts that might come up as a result of your explanation. And thank you so much for all the information that you shared so far.
Thank you so much for being here. We learn from each other, so this is great. We appreciate you being here. Let's go. I'll set out the list here, and then we'll get to the activities. Lisa, then Margaret, Mario, and Gwen, if you would, please.
Hi, it's Lisa's husband, Shmuel,
Hi.
and using her phone, obviously, but you know, same as many of the other residents, many of whom I know, part of the community. We're owners here, and we've lived in Battery Park for just about 10 years, in New York for 30, and obviously very vested interest in the project.
Thank you for being here. Margaret?
Hi, I'm Maggie Hopkins. I'm with the ACARF AECOM team, where ACARF is doing the environmental review in partnership with AECOM. So I am a very interested fly on the wall this evening.
Excellent. Mario and then Gwen, and then we'll get started.
Hi all, my name is Mario Yoa. I'm with AECOM, and I'm part of the design team that's working on the project.
Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Gwen, we know you. Oh, Gwen, you're muted. We'll hear from Gwen later. That's all right. We'll hear from Gwen later. We also have wonderful Arch Street team members here, Myron Mays and Sean Walbilick. And Sean is screen sharing right now. One concept that we want to introduce, and that'll help us organize our thoughts as we're sharing throughout this time together. So essentially, the project definition refers to specific parts of the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project as reach areas. And so as we get your feedback, when it applies to one quote unquote reach area or the other, it's great to kind of have a sense of what we mean by that. And so as you see here, through Reach 1, we have that section of the map and some pictures of the Tribeca area, Reach 2, North Esplanade. Sean, if we scroll down a little bit, see Reach 3, Rockefeller Park, Reach 4, Belvedere Plaza, Reach 5, North Cove, Reach 6, South Esplanade, and Reach 7, South Cove. Now clearly we have gone through these pictures and graphics very quickly, and they're here for us. If at any point during our discussion you want to see an area a little bit more closely, please let us know, and we'll be really happy to scroll back down. But in the meantime, we're using this tool called Miro because it helps us simulate as if we were in the room together. If this were an in-person meeting, we might take a whole bunch of different colored Post-its with a map of the project area, ask these questions, and we'd have fun getting to know each other and putting our comments right on the wall. We're going to do that virtually here. And so Sean is going to help us out. As I mentioned, as I ask these prompts, please use the raise hand function. I'll call out your name, and Sean will make sure to write it on that Post-it for you and stick it on the board. So we'll get a little brainstorming going here, and we're excited to get going. Thanks for going through that introduction with me. I appreciate it. One last thing, actually, before we get started, I don't want to forget, is somebody brave enough to volunteer to share the group's readout afterwards? Would somebody like to be our representative to the main group? No pressure. If not, I can do it. That's all right. As you can tell, I'm not particularly shy, so I think I'll be all right. All right. So if anybody feels compelled, we'll hand off those responsibilities. In the meantime, let's get started. Activity 1 we've called current uses because we really want to know from you how you use the project area, right? So we'd love for you to raise your hand at this point and give us a sense of what parts of the project site you use the most, what parts you use the least, and let's make this two-dimensional map feel 3D and in living color as we know it. Would anybody like to share first?
I'm happy to go first.
Thanks.
Sure. Our building is located right in front of Rockefeller Park, and that has a myriad of uses, from birthday parties to picnics to sports. Yes, basically that. I think there are also some corporate uses. I've seen sort of like big, large events taking place as well on the lawn. And it's packed with people just sunbathing in the summer and running, and just for general health purposes.
Well, that sounds like a great spot, huh? I think I should move in. What's the building? No, okay. So would anybody else like to go share their neck of the woods? What are you using the most? What are you perhaps not, what area are you not getting to as much as you might like?
I'll go. I think there's only 3 of us that live in the area. I think the rest are people with you guys. So I don't want to speak for everyone. But I'm sure we all sort of use the same. In fact, we all sort of live in the same area. I live in the River House, which is the other condominium, right next to the Irish Hunger Memorial. And so, I mean, I think Farah said it best. I mean, we're in it, engaging the park all the time. You're playing in the park, you're hanging out in the park, you're exercising in the park. There's even sometimes some school events. They have the talent show in the park. And so there's an assortment of uses. Great place to not put any more, what was I going to say? Put any more, what did you say? What would they put? Memorials, so we can keep using the green space. And so anyone who lives in the area has a very vested interest, but not just people who live in the area. To be honest with you, people come in from Brooklyn, from other parts of the city to use it. So it's a pretty active space. If you've ever stepped foot, you'd immediately notice it. I don't think there's any hidden things that people do in the park. I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you walk past it.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, and also with the monument priority, we're going to speak to some of those safekeeping areas and in the next activity, and so we'll put that all over the map there, because we really want to get into some of those priority areas and get a feel for get a feel for that sense of the public sentiment, because we understand that is a priority for folks. And so as far as the current uses goes, I am curious, since the 3 of you live there, obviously there's in one particular area, if you could broaden the perspective for the purpose of this exercise here, and speak to perhaps other parts, other reach areas, as we label them here, that are maybe used a little bit differently or for different purposes or have different popularity levels than your core part of the neighborhood.
Yeah, Michael, if I may, just really quickly, I think you're getting at something that's equally valuable for us, and that's spaces you do not use, maybe purposely. They're uncomfortable. They don't provide the type of programming that you would hope to have available. It's too busy, whatever the case is. All of those things are equally instructive. Is there one particular place you normally avoid?
This is Shmuel again. I'm going to echo probably what Brian and Farah said to some extent, because we live in a similar area, and we use it in similar ways. We all have kids in the neighborhood, and I think a lot of the people who live in this neighborhood are young families, a lot of kids. What gets you, this is New York City. Every inch of public space gets used, and it gets used constantly, all the time, high value. What makes this neighborhood special and valuable, and what makes people honestly love living here, is all of the green space, all of the public space, all of the bike path, the running path. Like, it's a lot of outdoor activity space, and it all gets used all the time. The things that don't get used, are spaces that got turned into not publicly available green spaces. So things like the proposed memorial that so far isn't going to be built, but there are a lot of other public statues and unusable outdoor spaces. And honestly, I think every time somebody in the neighborhood sees an outdoor space that is made unusable, it hurts, because every ounce of usable space outside is used by kids, by adults, and all those green spaces, I think, are really the jewels of the neighborhood.
I would actually
I
add
could
one.
give you,
sorry.
I could give a perspective just, sorry, I'll put my camera on, from the, I come out from the west, so I jog there, from coming over across Northmore. And so the Reach 1 is a critical area. And obviously, this is obviously, probably one of the key areas of Lower Manhattan to come on down and wrap yourself into the point at the Battery. So it's really, for people who are not living here, very much a promenade and a great walk. And the critical juncture between Reach 1 and I guess it is Reach 2, as I'm sure you're well aware, is not the most easy thing to get around, particularly now with these large sort of Tesco barrier looking things that prevent you from going across. But that area between the two would be, is an opportunity for resolve, I hope gets addressed. But anyway, that's from a perspective from someone who's not living directly in that neighborhood.
And Doug, I see your hand raised. What would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. I'll just say, someone who works in the area, I've utilized the space myself, mainly for kind of lunchtime walks and sitting out looking at the water while I'm having lunch personally. I know that we have had students that have utilized the space. I know we did some partnership programs where we had students coming in, going to the Museum of Jewish Heritage, I believe it is, on several occasions for educational programming, and which is fantastic. I would love to find out more about how our students utilize the space and how we could potentially partner specifically around education related amenities, or the museums, or even some of the sculptures and the statues and the artwork and things like that.
That's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I'm thinking back on the past year or so, well, almost 2 years now, very different life experience for most of us. I think that's safe to say, given everything. And so I'm curious to hear how the usage might have changed as far as frequency. And some of this clearly is going to be, it's okay if it sounds obvious. We still want to hear it from you. Has the frequency changed? Have the priorities of the use of that outdoor space changed with that time frame in mind? Oh, Doug, is that a fresh hand?
No, sorry about that. Let me lower.
No worries.
Okay.
No problem at all. Would anybody like to?
And I would just say, obviously during COVID, a lot of people moved out of the area in the beginning of COVID. But as time has progressed, I mean, people started moving back to the area because of the green spaces. So I know I saw from my experiences, people moving from Chelsea, Upper West Side, other parts of the city for the green space to be able to go out and have the fresh air. And so you went from having maybe a historically low occupancy through 2020 to now the highest occupancy rate or the least amount of availability in the area from people coming here from other parts of the city, from Jersey, from Brooklyn, from Queens, and then people from Battery Park returning. And I think, people are using the parks, or moved here specifically for them, or again, other areas that are coming here. And just to add a point, the schools use the parks too. They'll look at the flowers in the little garden in Rockefeller Park. They'll look at the statues. Besides going to the obvious museums, I've seen classes of kids running, doing exercising, running on the paths. I mean, it's used by everyone. Lunches, as you mentioned, I've seen people working out there. It's used by many people.
Yeah, if anything, sorry, I haven't figured out the hand thing, but if anything,
No,
I don't know how to do the hand thing either, by the way.
Yeah,
it's all right. A visual hand is okay too. I think we're a small enough group. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the parks were always used pre-pandemic. They were chock full, and during the pandemic, I think they continued to be chock full, and the difference was like it became so much more necessary. Like I think everybody in this neighborhood and from other neighborhoods just felt like, you know, we couldn't get together indoors. As Brian said, there were sports that maybe you used to do inside, like softball, soccer, you know, CrossFit, like everything, just working out outdoors. And it just became a necessity. It really saved a lot of people's lives, figuratively and literally, to be outdoors more and be able to continue to socialize and not become, you know, like borderline agoraphobic, like the pandemic did to a lot of people. We were able to live outdoors in the green space. I mean, it just like took a good thing and made it better and more necessary. Like there's a lot of buildings, if you look around outside my window, it's a lot of buildings around here, and there are a lot of people living in a relatively small area, as is normal in New York. But this works because of the public space, and it thrives because of the public space. I think that's what probably a lot of people are concerned about with respect to this project.
And that passion for that open space growing throughout the pandemic, that's a shared feeling among folks. The rest here, anybody want to build on that as far as moving forward? What's the expectation as far as that appreciation? I know that I have, you know, a greater appreciation for outdoor spaces, and I went through similar experiences as you and so many folks of really valuing that outdoor space. I'm curious for your sense of your own home, your own neighborhood. What's the likelihood that continues, that prioritization continues?
I think everyone here would say it's only going to increase over time as Manhattan fills up with more and more buildings. Open spaces will only become increasingly more important.
Particularly parks, as we see our streets now being over and our roadbeds now being overtaken by things like the open restaurants and things, which are, you know, taking over a great deal of open space that is no longer going to be available.
I think that's a great segue.
Is Sheep's Meadow important, like, to New York? Like, yeah, it's not, this is not pandemic specific. It's really, really, really important to Lower Manhattan as a whole.
Yes, and I would also like to add the perspective of a mother. You know, Battery Park City is baby central, and for parents who, particularly during COVID, but not just during COVID, who struggle with mental health very often in a city that is very difficult to be a parent in, Battery Park has been definitely an oasis of peace, and it's very stroller friendly and safe, and that is something that young parents with very young kids highly appreciate. And also it helps foster a sense of community because you get to meet other parents with young babies and sort of be together and grow together as parents. In addition to that, I also wanted to point out that the Battery Park City Authority has been traditionally, perhaps pre-pandemic, very proactive in developing programs for kids in the parks. And that has been actually a tremendous benefit that has made this neighborhood particularly popular for young kids. It's soccer classes, art classes. I think it's even like farming classes where the kids get to interact with nature and they get to do art on the ground, and they get to play soccer in the field. And it's all creating a very strong sense of community and making a very good use of our space. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you for doing so. There's been so much.
I was going to say,
sure, and then we'll go to activity
just to put in perspective, just in my one building, I think there's 400 plus kids in my one building. I'm sure in their building there's a large amount too. Just so you can grasp, I know when Farah says it's baby central, I want you to understand how many children are in the area using these green space. These are ones just located here, let alone the downtown Little League, baseball, football, so on and so forth, who are going to use the fields and the areas for practice. So that's just wanted to give you some perspective.
The beautiful thing about these exercises is that the project team really wants to assume nothing. We want to truly gather your input and hear from you how you use it, what you prioritize. I mean, we obviously spend a lot of time in that area, but hearing it from you, it really brings home the importance of what you're sharing. So we're thrilled that you're doing so. And what I've heard us share really does now segue us into activity 2, which is this idea of shared priorities. So we'll get a fresh map, we'll get new colored Post-its. It's we might as well change up the color. It makes it fun, keeps us on our toes here. The map is the same though, clearly because the project site is the same. But the question here now gets to the heart of what some of you alluded to, which is what parts of this area, and obviously the whole thing is important to everybody, but what specific parts really elevate in your mind as this is a priority for me for preservation of a particular aspect, and opening it up next to where might some change be okay? What type of areas? And I'll open it up.
I was going to say the challenge in the way Battery Park is designed and is that it's all really utilized in the sense, like if you were going to build a barrier by the edge of the water, you're going to potentially affect the view. You're going to affect where people walk by, where they sit and hang out and enjoy the quiet space. And so, I mean, your question of like, where could you build that someone wouldn't notice? I can't comprehend where you could possibly build something that no one would notice or be bothered by. I mean, it's not, although it's a fairly large area, not really. I mean, it can get pretty filled. The paths that you're biking on are not particularly wide. And so it's like, I couldn't imagine how you'd put up a wall and have it not be a problem by constraining the space in some way. But, maybe someone else has a thought on it.
Brian, I think it's a really good point. And for this exercise and in general, as the project design evolves, there may be some cases where it is the wall you're picturing, but in other cases, like in Wagner Park or the South Battery Park City Resiliency Project, the wall is actually below the park. It's hidden entirely. So if we think about the idea of elevating space to obscure those features, is it all right in your guys' estimation that as long as there's not a loss of green space or loss of recreational area, but say the esplanade, the running and biking paths are just elevated, is that in the realm of acceptable change?
Sorry, how would you elevate like the biking, like the path along the water? And now I'm talking about the north. To elevate that would then interrupt if you were in the actual Rockefeller Park, the green area. Would it not stop you from being able to look out and you wouldn't be able to enjoy sort of the views is what people sort of like about Battery Park versus maybe the alternative being raising, and I can't imagine, sounds like a huge project, but raising the entire Rockefeller Park up. So that way somehow by the water, you'd be looking over it. But if you're raising the edges up, now you basically put everyone in a box. And so
right.
now, where they can't look out.
No, you're 100% right. And I would say the likelihood of that scenario ever happening where we just raise the edge and leave everything else alone, it has almost 0% chance of happening. And actually what you said it's an enormous project of elevating Rockefeller Park is very likely to happen. I mean, that is a very likely possible outcome. It's awfully transformative, but in terms of balancing views, balancing, visual effects of having a barrier system there, some of it is about just being able to meet the elevation either with land or park space, or in other cases, flip up deployables that lie flat, but will tip up to be 7 or 8 feet tall. Otherwise, you would not necessarily know that you're stepping over them at any given point. There are a number of tricks to sort of weave a connected system through a landscape. But, you know, I think one of our overarching goals in general is to impact park space to the bare minimum degree. Certainly not reduce it, and try to find ways to enhance it where we can, either with a barrier system wall becoming or replacing the existing granite wall along River Terrace as one example, with a flood rated system that looks exactly like the wall that's there now. It may just be a foot taller, but it would still be granite clad, so on and so on, but could be certified by FEMA. So there are a lot of tricks in like landscape camouflage that I think we can think about, which is actually one of the really major reasons that this is a fun project as much as it is complicated. Being able to figure those details out is actually the cool part for me. I'm a landscape architect, so sort of stands to reason.
You tipped your hand on that, Gary.
Yeah, finally, I just come out and say it.
I think it's wonderful to hear. Oh, Brian, sorry, you're muted, and I want to bring you back into it, Brian. And then Alice has her hand raised, so I want to incorporate her in this as well.
I was going to say, everyone likes the idea of using the existing walls or maybe building new ones, maybe if they're slightly taller. I think using the landscape where it's not obvious was what people generally like. I wanted to go back a step, and maybe this was covered because I think it's on the minds of a lot of owners in the area. So they talk about the 50-year flood, just so we can comprehend the situation. Has there already been studies, like let's say the last 20 years, what the actual water level in Battery Park, how has it changed? Does that data exist, or are we just making a lot of assumptions on how high the water we think it's going to be? Like, is there actually data, just so we understand that, so we can grasp the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the initial study work that we've done to start establishing some of these elevations, and a lot of it comes from. So I'll start with the 50-year or 100-year storm. It's really terrible language. I wish that federal agencies would move away from using that terminology because it's completely misleading. All it's meant to say is that there's a 1% chance of this storm happening any given year. Not that we get one and then we are cool for 100. And that as a first bit of understanding is important, because it could also happen several times in a given year. But generally speaking, that 100-year is the 1% chance. And that's actually what is also tied back to FEMA flood insurance, is that 100-year storm event. So then when we project forward, one of the difficulties of using historical data is that the rate of change is significantly lower than it's likely to be into the future. So the forward projections are looking at probability of ice melt, expansion of water in the ocean just because it's warmer, and believe it or not, warmer water takes up more space. There are a variety of things that go into those projections. And then there's a very complicated three-dimensional statistical model that's built. It's called the hydrodynamic model. And that runs thousands of different hurricane track scenarios, changes direction and speed of wind, so on and so on, so that we end up with a composite understanding of, where is the sweet spot for not overbuilding, but not getting it wrong either. I hope that started to answer the question.
So there's no data, there's no post data just on water levels. It's all models projecting forward. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it is. I mean, right now, Sandy, at least in parts of Battery Park City, reached about elevation 11. And as an example, elevation 11 to 12, actually, in some cases. And as an example, the Esplanade in general is roughly at elevation 9.5, almost universally throughout Battery Park City. Some bits are maybe at 10. But Hurricane Sandy was considered it's actually considered a 260-year event. But present day, it doesn't factor in for sea level rise in the way that we need to. And one of the ways that we have gone about setting these design elevations or discovering them is to think about what it means to have maybe more protection than we need in the 2050s, because we're using that 90 percentile rise event. It's the most conservative we could be. But when you get to 2080, that now becomes the intermediate range. It's like the middle guidance right down the center of what sea level rise projections could be. When you get to 2100, it's still well within the low to intermediate range. So,
and Garrett, if I could bring it back to the answer, it's wonderful information. I appreciate you sharing it. I did just get the warning that we have about 8-9 minutes left, and so I want to bring us back to this opportunity to kind of get some more of this input, even though I know how important it is to have that information flow both ways. And so what I did hear from Brian also through this conversation was a priority for paths to remain wide enough to be passable, for views to be prioritized, for the integrity of what is, the spirit of what is to remain in whatever comes next. And so I love that coming out of this conversation. Alice, I know you've had your hand raised. You've been very patient. If you want to, I'd love for you to share.
I think, I think the points are all pretty obvious, respectfully. Obviously people want to park and they want to keep it as park-like as possible. I'm not sure what exactly we're providing to you, but clearly, I think, I look forward to getting the information from you all as to what sort of passive solutions are out there that can be entertained, and how do you have the most minimal demolition of this park as possible, and how does this really integrate with the Hudson River Park Trust Park, and how is sort of moving from one to the other, and obviously all those kinds of questions. I think it's great to participate and understand the whole a little bit more as we go forward, how these sorts of, from east to west, what's going on in the east side coastal resiliency, and what are we picking up from them, lessons learned as to what you'll be doing here, and information like that would be very, very helpful just going forward in terms of what's important to preserve, I think, as much as possible of what's good, and I think a great deal of it is, and particularly just enough space to move around and be able to capitalize on, recreation and promenade and all those good things. And, I know earlier on you had showed the community plans that were quite sophisticated and well thought out, with even moving out into infill conditions a little bit into the north area from the North Esplanade. And I just curious where all that went, and, when we'll be seeing sort of approaches. Was that all decided it wasn't going to work, or where did we go with that? So I don't know. These are more questions than answers, so I'm probably not.
No, that's all right. That's all right. It's
just
important, it's important to hear it.
Yeah.
We've had multiple touch points in different public engagement exercises, and tonight, aside from the initial brief presentation, was really meant to be an opportunity to hear from you and to take in information as the project definition continues to form, so that the outcome represents your priorities as much as possible. And we'll have additional opportunities as the project moves along to share more of that information as it becomes available and is developed. So I don't mean to come across as,
curious if you could just, the plans that we had seen, I guess, over a year ago now, where are those at this point? Have those been completely put to the side, or?
And Garrett, when you answer, we'll just keep in mind that we have about 2 minutes left in this room.
I don't want
no problem at all. I'll be as quick as I can. So Alice, all of those plans are going to be included as part of the background information that the new design team will be provided. It's not taken off the table. There were a lot of technical reasons and a lot of spatial reasons that the proposal for the North Esplanade segment became what it did. I think one of the main ones is something you actually hit on right at the outset about making the connection between Rockefeller Park and Hudson River Park, and that Reach 2 is really the bridge between those parks and deserves to be its own park-like connection.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to seeing what comes of all of this, of course.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Can I ask specifically about the marina area, the plaza surrounding it, in terms of preserving its existing configuration or character or openness? Where are you on what it's like now, what it could be? And do you even use it?
By the marina, there's a lot of activities. They do events there all the time. Brookfield has an arts calendar where they're doing different events throughout the year. And so, and it's an active way, obviously, around the marina where people are walking, biking, and whatnot, besides eating just outdoors to enjoy that space. I just wanted to throw out there, if you wanted to get rid of something, and I don't want to speak for the others here, but I would say the ferry terminal. I think you can just completely delete that.
I've been meaning to ask you all about the ferry terminal.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I vote for it. And so, and maybe we could just make that a little island that just sits there. And so,
well, that's the new opportunities, activity 3, new opportunities. What do you definitely want to see changed? We'll scroll down and we'll put that there. Garrett, I didn't mean to jump on if you wanted some very site-specific feedback, though. That's important.
That area gets used for a lot of different ends, from ice skating, from the tennis they put up, from cars they post. I mean, it's and even just the eating on the Esplanade, again, another place to walk or skateboard with the kids or scooter and whatnot, or just lounge. To me, it reminds me of was it Las Ramblas in like Spain? If you're in like in Spain, it just, or sort of an area where there's like a marina and there's, you know, a lot of places around it. And so, you know, even the green space that's by the district, you know, people eat there, they go out there. I've had like little events there. And so it's, I mean, it all, I guess, like we said earlier, it all gets used. I mean, in my experience, I've been living here for a while. I think it all just gets used.
Yeah, I actually had dinner there Tuesday night. But if we were to preserve the existing programming that's there now, and perhaps through reconfiguration, actually be able to accommodate new and different programming, do any of you expect that there would be, you know, heartburn as it relates to sort of changing the existing nature of that space?
And Megan, if you're comfortable answering that question, please chime in on that. I know that you've had your hand raised. I'd love to bring you into this conversation as well.
Well, I just wanted to, Stuyvesant High School is located right there too. They use the whole area for when they have their fire alarms and things like that. So the children, all, I think 3,000, 4,000 students pile out too during that. So they need it for just the safety concerns of that too. But I'm pretty much agreeing with what everyone is saying about lots of things here. So I just wanted to bring up Stuyvesant being right there as well. So
yeah, thank you for doing so.
I was just going to add, and I know, Garrett, we spoke about it when we went on one of the tours, you know, that is certainly a landscape that could be rethought. I mean, I think there's a question that design is pretty dated, and certainly there are certain parts that aren't utilized at all. And so I don't think the community would object. I mean, what do I know? But, you know, I don't think that people would object to seeing sort of change with that amount of space or more utilized differently and offering opportunities that we may not be aware of as you work into the design. I mean, I don't see that as a problem at all. As far as the ferry terminal, I mean, it's an interesting point, but I think it's important that we have access to a ferry somewhere along the west side of Lower Manhattan.
Just perhaps not in the most narrow of all parts of the Esplanade.
Right.
We'll save that for another time. Activity 3, Michael, right?
Activity 3, real quickly, any other opportunities? Anything that you say, okay, well, a project seems to be happening, right? What can we improve? What particular area would you say, it'd be nice to have that there?
I think a lot more green space, and a lot of this or permeable areas where you have a lot of hardscape at what's called the volleyball plaza or whatever that's called. And in the area that you're talking about, Brookfield Plaza, it could certainly have more green and even potentially something that's even enhanced recreation and passive and active.
I would mention just one thing that people maybe don't think about, but I utilize it. Like behind the Irish Hunger Memorial, there's a flat cement area, and some might think, oh, there's an underutilized space, but I would say that's where kids roller skate, scooter, practice bicycling, and so some of those hardscapes are actually used by kids riding around, and because you can't do everything on the grass, and so I just want to just make people aware of that. It does, it does get used in some.